Thank you for joining me for another week of Honey from the Word. This week's devotion is titled, I Heard, I Seen, and I Will, from 2 Kings chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. In those days Hezekiah was sick and near death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, went to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Then he turned his face toward the wall and prayed to the Lord, saying, Remember now, O Lord, I pray, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart, and have done what was good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. And it happened before Isaiah had gone out into the middle court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Return, and tell Hezekiah, the leader of my people, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Surely I will heal you. On the third day you shall go up to the house of the Lord, and I will add to your days 15 years. I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. This happened at a time of Assyrian invasion of Judah, because Jerusalem had not been delivered from the Assyrian threat yet. The events of this chapter are also recorded in Isaiah 38. Hezekiah was one of the few great kings of Judah. His rule was one of the longest because he walked faithfully with God, and the Lord blessed him for that. Hezekiah tore down all the altars in the high places. He set his heart to serve God and cleanse the nation from sinful practices. This was remarkable in light of the fact that his father Ahaz had been such a wicked man and a king. It was King Hezekiah that took and destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had made, because the people of Judah had begun to worship it like a magic charm. So here's the situation for Hezekiah: sickness. Verse 1 says that Hezekiah was sick and near death. In other words, he was dying. He was dangerously ill. He was deathly sick. He was deathly ill. Then here comes the preacher with some more bad news. Looks like Isaiah, who had been the herald of hope, has now become the propagator of pessimism and doom. From what we know of Hezekiah and Isaiah, there's probably a strong bond of respect and friendship between them. Thus, it must have been difficult for Isaiah to deliver the message that God had given him for Hezekiah. But with typical frankness and clarity, he did so. I can well imagine, though, that there must have been a lump in his throat when he said, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. He's sick, and now he's told to set his house in order because he's going to die. He was in a tight spot. His back was against the wall. Hezekiah was in a fix. Not only was he dying, but God sent him word that he was going to die. It's one thing when a doctor tells you you're going to die, but when God tells you that you're going to die, the best thing you can do is get your affairs in order. If a doctor tells you you're going to die, that you have maybe 6 months, there's still some hope. I have known some to live years after a doctor gave them up. I've also known them to find a cure while the person was sick. But when God says you're going to die, it doesn't matter what they do or find, you're going to die. It's final when God says it. Now that's an impossible situation if there ever has been one. Hezekiah could have developed a 5-point plan for end-of-life care: hospice, do not resuscitate order, power of attorney, and organ donation. So what does the king do? He does not go to fortune tellers or soothsayers. He doesn't consult his horoscope. He prays to God, passionately prays to God. Another thing to note here is that it appears that Hezekiah was not married at the time. So when he was told he would die, he had no heir to the throne to take his place. Manasseh was born during this 15-year extension of his life and became king at 12 years old. Verse 2 tells us that he turned his face toward the wall and prayed to the Lord. At the point of the bad news, he turned his face toward the wall. You see, prayer can cause you to change your position. Notice Hezekiah was not an emergency 911 Christian. He was walking faithfully with the Lord before a crisis hit. Hezekiah was not afflicted with disease because of some personal sin issue, but because he was human. Human suffering is the norm and not always the result of some specific personal sin. Even the best Christians are not exempt from suffering and loss. We notice that Hezekiah turned his face to the wall. The Message put it this way. Translation says, Hezekiah turned away from Isaiah and facing the wall, prayed to God. With his face to the wall, Hezekiah could only see one thing, and that was God. He saw nothing but God, and he cried out to God and prayed with tears. He was sincere. So many times in the midst of crises, we lose our focus. We get focused on the problem, what people are saying, what the experts are saying, what the devil is whispering in our ear, and on and on and on. It's time we got our focus back on the Lord. This is what happened to Peter when he saw Jesus walking on the water. Instead of keeping his focus on Jesus, he started focusing on the storm that was around him. Because he lost his focus, he started sinking. But once he got his focus back on Jesus, he was able to once again walk on the water with Jesus back to the boat. It's interesting to note the response from God to a man who had walked faithfully with him. It was an immediate response. Before Isaiah gets out of the courtyard, he's instructed to return immediately and tell Hezekiah that the Lord has heard his prayers and seen his tears and would heal him completely in 3 days. Not only this, but God even tells him how much longer he will live, exactly, an extra 15 years. Look at Hezekiah for a moment. He became king when he was only 25, at a time when many of his subjects were idol worshipers. He spent most of his life getting people to turn back to God. He cleaned out the idols from the temple, brought back worship to Jerusalem. He ruled wisely and saved up a lot for his country. In every sense, Hezekiah was a good man. Yet death was knocking on his door permanently. Hezekiah had a good reason to complain and be bitter with God, but instead he prayed and begged God to change his mind. Hezekiah did not let the bad news take him to the grave. He was an overcomer. The prayer does not have to be long, and according to the King James Version, there were only about 30 words in this prayer. God changed his mind. God reserves the right to change his mind. So in conclusion, sometimes God changes his mind. Notice the words of verse 5. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Surely I will heal you. I believe some waters are being stirred as you listen to this. Some of you have your backs against the wall. The devil doesn't realize it, but he's made a mistake by backing you up against the wall. You've been praying for healing. You've been praying for your children. You've been praying for a situation at your job, and Maybe you've been praying about your marriage. Maybe you've been praying about some inner struggle you've been going through. Some of you have been praying about that depression you've been in. I'm not a prophet, but I believe the Lord is saying to you, I have heard your prayers. I have seen your tears, and I'm going to heal you. I'm going to deliver you. I'm going to set you free. I'm going to answer your prayer, the prayer that you've been crying out to me for. This is the time, by faith, that you're going to hear those words from the Lord. I have seen your prayer and seen your tears, and I'm going to answer you. I don't know what negative things the enemy has spoken over your life or what dark cloud is hanging over you. I don't know what is attacking your life at the moment, but I keep hearing the words of the Lord. I have heard your prayer, and I have seen your tears, and I'm going to heal you. In other words, I'm going to answer that prayer for you. Psalm 6, 8, and 9 says this, For the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. I have heard and I have seen, and I'm getting ready to answer. May the Lord bless you this week, and may you be encouraged in knowing that God not only hears you, but He sees your tears.